Because you can get very disheartened listening to your own government, or to the government of the United States, the powers that be, the self-appointed powers. When we have people like Rishi Sunak, who's blaming the protesters rather than the massacre, saying that there's extremist forces in the country when a constituency chooses somebody that stands up for Palestine rather than refuses to call for a ceasefire. And often we forget that actually there's a bigger world out there. And being Chilean, I'm very aware of the global majority, as I like to call it, and the voices of the global majority that have come out in force since October, but sadly are not reflected in the mainstream media whatsoever. If it wasn't for South Africa taking the case to the ICJ, there's no doubt we wouldn't have heard the voices from Africa either. And Latin American countries have been at the forefront of condemning what's been happening for years, but specifically since October. And only last week, Lula accused Israel of genocide and was slammed down for it at the African summit. But what was and obviously he's supported by Pedros in Colombia, Maduro in Venezuela, also Boric in Chile themselves has also come out. And what's really significant about what Lula has done is not only that this represents a voice that's not heard in the mainstream media, it is because it's broken with US hegemony. And that's particularly important for us as Latin Americans because we've lived under the control, the neo-colonization, and the imperialism of the United States for very much part of the 20th century and the 21st century, with a few welcome breaks in between whenever we dare to choose a president that stands up. And as a consequence, we've paid ourselves with blood in military coups, in brutal dictatorships, and in puppet regimes that have been upheld by the United States. So for Lula and many other South American presidents to come out against what is happening is very significant. It is also significant because we too know about Israel's hostility. We too know because many of our military regimes in Latin America have been armed by Israel, have been trained by Israel, and also have spewed the same propaganda mill of our elite within our own countries. And in a continent that has been dominated by the United States, Cuba, for the last 65 years, has been a shining example. Not only to us in Latin America, but across the world. And it's no coincidence that Cuba has extended its hand of solidarity to Palestine since the Cuban Revolution. And again, this is something that we do not know about, and it's not discussed anywhere outside of those countries. So I'm very honoured to be chairing this meeting today, in which you have the amazing opportunity to hear about Cuba's example of solidarity and what it's done for the last 65 years, but also a Palestinian voice and how important international solidarity is, obviously now more than ever. So before I introduce, so we have two speakers today. We have Tony Anderson, who's a campaigns officer for Cuba Solidarity Campaign, and wrote an amazing article not long ago in the Morning Star specifically about the solidarity between Cuba and Palestine. And we have Daoud Neda from the north of Gaza, who went viral not long ago for daring to stand in a Labour fundraising event and want his voice heard about what was happening in Gaza and specifically what happened to his family. He was shamefully pushed out of that meeting without being heard and manhandled by security guards with no reason. There was no need for any of that. But we thought it was very important for you to have the opportunity today to hear what Daoud wasn't allowed to say in that meeting that day. And before we start, so the idea is I'll give each speaker 20 minutes, and then I think we can open up to questions and answers or any comments that people might have from the floor. And also we'll have a little bit of time at the end for people just to chat amongst themselves stalls that we have here, and also many announcements by the coalition here in Sheffield. I have to say I'm very proud, always been very proud to be part of the Sheffield political community, but even more so than ever, I think. The amount of events that Sheffield, the coalition and partners have organised since October has been magnificent. I mean, I'm surprised at the standard. The money that's been fundraised from the Shears team back in Gaza. The amount of work that's gone on in terms of keeping Palestine in the public eye and in the narrative, because we all know that that's been trying to be now pushed aside. We initially invited the Cuban ambassador, who sadly had just gone back to Cuba. She was going to send the second in charge, but unfortunately they're not able to be here. But I'm going to read out a statement that they sent in support of today's meeting. Can you hear me at the back all right? Yeah. I thought you did. Great. Dear friends, thank you very much for the invitation to this event. A last-minute issue has prevented us from attending, but we want to send a message to your meeting. Just a fortnight ago, the US government, for the third time, voted against a draft resolution at the UN Security Council calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, recent reports from Gaza's Ministry of Health and the NGO Save the Children confirm that in the 24 hours alone, 7 Palestinian children have died of malnutrition in Gaza due to Israelis' bombardment of civilians and obstacles to the entry of humanitarian aid. And of course, we've all seen the shocking sights of the last attempts of taking aid. And in this case, we're not talking about data and numbers. These are lives that Israel's bombs are extinguishing. Nothing can justify the killing of innocents. In the face of this sad situation, we cannot stand idly by while every minute of inaction will cost more innocent lives. Cuba has always reiterated in all multilateral forums its solidarity with the brotherly Palestinian people who are suffering the terrible consequences of decades of Israeli practices of illegal occupation and colonization, in flagrant violation of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people in their own territory, as well as the prolonged disrespect for the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law, including numerous relevant UN resolutions. Likewise, Cuba is defending the urgent need for a comprehensive, just and lasting solution to the conflict that includes the creation of an independent Palestinian state within the pre-67 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital and the return of the refugees. We support the South Africa's application to the ICJ against Israel concerning Israel's violations of its obligations as a state party to the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crimes of Genocide. On the 21st of February, Cuban Deputy Foreign Minister Anayansi Rodriguez attended the court hearing, where she stressed that the advisory opinion to the issue must be in line with the grave historical moment we are living through. We will not abandon our Palestinian brothers. As the Cuban president said, and I quote, "History will not forgive the indifferent, and we will not be among them." Free Palestine. And I thought that. Always. So, no longer ado, Tariq, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? I don't really have that much of an outside voice, so if you're struggling to hear me.
Is the mic here?
Stand up. Stand up.
Is that better? Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and thank you very much for the invitation. Always good to be in the People's Republic of South Yorkshire, as I believe it's now. But also, obviously, as you've heard, I'm the campaigns officer for the Cuba Solidarity Campaign. But a lifetime ago, I started my sort of political journey in Palestine solidarity movement. The first sort of thing I got involved in politically in earnest was organising the Palestine Solidarity Campaign when I was at university, which led me then to spending a month in the West Bank in 2014. Should have been 3 months actually, but the good folk at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv weren't too fond of me, so I only got a month there. But I spent a month volunteering with the Right to Education campaign at Birzeit University, an anti-occupation campaign led by students there, which sort of mapped the impact of the occupation on Palestinians' right to education. So obviously this is a sort of a topic which is very close to my heart, and one which I'm very happy to speak about. I'll just go over a few things, the sort of historical solidarity, the historical links of solidarity, and everything that Cuba has done both in words and actions to demonstrate its solidarity with the Palestinians over the years, talk about the last few months and what the Cubans have been doing, and then just finish off, I guess, with a message of what that history of solidarity can teach us as trade unionists, as socialists, as internationalists, as activists in this country. So yeah, in a few hours' time, Cubans from across the island will be participating in the International Day of Action for Palestine. The Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, has called on all Cubans in all provinces to come out onto the streets, demonstrate their solidarity, call for an end to the genocide that's currently taking place in Gaza. Now, this act of solidarity will be just the latest in a long line of acts of solidarity between Cuba and Palestine, and it stretches right back to the earliest days of the revolution. In the first 6 months of the revolution, Che Guevara, Raul Castro, and a delegation of Cuban revolutionaries went on their very first international mission to countries across Africa, Asia, the Middle East, countries which the Cuban Revolution deemed to be at the forefront of the anti-imperialist struggle. And at the invitation of Nasser, Nasser's government, obviously at the time in 1959, administered the Gaza Strip, what we know as the Gaza Strip now, and they were invited to the refugee camps in Gaza. And while not much has been written about Che's and Raul's visit to the camps, there are a couple of quotes which have been reported on, which I just wanted to pick out. As they were in the Al Burej camp in Gaza, they were taken on a tour, and Che was reported to have said when witnessing the sort of conditions that the Palestinian refugees were forced to live under, he said, "This is all the work of the gringos." Later on, when he was visiting Rafah, he was approached by a Palestinian refugee there in Rafah, and this Palestinian refugee asked Che to tell the Americans the truth of what they had witnessed there in the camps. Che told him that they would denounce what they had seen before all of humanity. And that is exactly what the Cubans have been doing, not just in words, but in actions since the very first few months of the revolution. And they've demonstrated this solidarity in a few different ways. Although this sort of era of global revolution is now no longer with us, in the 60s and 70s, Cuba very much supported, with material support, the Palestinian arms struggle. As early as 1968, Cubans sent material support to the camps in Jordan as the Palestinians were embarking on their arms struggle to support the Fedayeen, to train them. And actually later on, in 1973, the Cubans sent an expeditionary force of between 500 and 1,000 people to fight in the 1973 Arab-Israeli war. Something which I never knew about till recent days. But some 180 Cubans lost their lives in that battle, or in that war, should I say, mainly in battles on Syrian territory. So they supported the armed struggle, but they also were actively involved in the sort of diplomatic field and in the political arena. And Cuba has consistently used its platform in these international institutions, in the UN, to denounce Israel's crimes and to advocate for the Palestinian cause. And I mean, I could be here all day sort of reeling off quotes from Fidel at the UN, where he denounces Israel's crimes and stands up for the Palestinians, but I won't subject you to hours and hours of Fidel quotes. I did want to point out one example. In the 1970s, I think it was in 1975, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution describing Zionism, or calling Zionism a form of racism. Cuba was one of the co-sponsors of that, one of the few non-Arab countries to co-sponsor that resolution. And in 91, I think it was, when the resolution was sadly rescinded, Cuba was one of the few countries to oppose that rescinding. And in the sort of field of diplomacy, the Cubans, from the earliest days of the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1964, the Cubans offered the PLO full diplomatic status, not observer status, not mealy-mouthed halfway house, full diplomatic status from the earliest days of the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And in 1973, up until today, Cuba has completely broken off its diplomatic relations with Israel. It still has no diplomatic relations with Israel in protest of Israel's continued crimes against the Palestinians. And as the Palestinian national liberation movement sort of progressed and sort of adapted, I guess, to changing times, and it became one which predominantly sought to get recognition as an independent state, the Cubans have played a really important role in the Palestinians receiving observer status at the UN. A Fatah official called Mohammed Ode, who actually trained in Cuba as a dentist, which I'll come on to later, once told Al Jazeera, "Not many people know this, but the Cubans had a huge role in us seeking the status of non-member observer state, and we still liaise with them on all high-level international matters." So those links between the Palestinian national movement and the Cuban Revolution remain to this day, and we've seen that since October, in the wake of Israel's genocidal onslaught on the Palestinian people of Gaza. The Cubans have remained steadfast in their solidarity with the people of Palestine. And again, like I said earlier, with the sort of, I could be here all day reeling off the quotes from Cuban officials, Cuban people, since October, where they strongly denounce Israel's crimes. But I just wanted to pick out one quote from Miguel Diaz-Canel, the Cuban president. And this was in the first few weeks of the onslaught on Gaza. And I think this quote sort of encapsulates how Cuba, for the want of a better word, pulls no punches and doesn't, excuse my language, pussyfoot around the issue. Diaz-Canel said, and this was on October the 29th, "We do not accept certain selective indignation that seeks to ignore the seriousness of the genocide that is perpetrated today against the Palestinians, presenting the Israeli side as the victim and ignoring 75 years of attacks, occupation, abuse and exclusion. Nothing can justify what Israel's army is doing in Gaza." And we heard a little bit earlier about what Rishi Sunak had to say yesterday. The stark contrast of the Cuban president and most other world leaders in what they had to say about Israel's genocide in Gaza is clear for all to see. And as we heard from the Cuban embassy statement, Cuba has thrown its full weight of support behind South Africa's historic case they brought to the ICJ. The Foreign Ministry of Cuba has expressed their conviction that South Africa's claim, and I quote, "should be understood and heeded as an urgent call to stop the hideous international crimes of genocide against humanity and apartheid being perpetrated against the Palestinian people." And I think this was in the statement as well, but more recently we've had some public hearings this week, I think, relating to South Africa's case at the ICJ. And the Cubans have argued there in those public hearings that the court should establish the legal consequences both for Israel and other states, including our own, who are backing this genocide. And to quote from Nancy Rodriguez, the minister who's mentioned earlier, "Once the commission of genocide or crimes against humanity has been declared, there should be clear legal implications for all states that act in a manner that ignores or undermines the decision or opinion of the court." So Cuba has consistently used its position sort of in the family of nations, as you will, in these international institutions, to call strongly for an end to this genocide and in solidarity with the Palestinians. But like it's done so often in the past, it's not just words, it's not just statements. Cubans put this commitment to solidarity in action as it relates to the Palestinians. And I just wanted to pick on one example, which I think those who are supporters of Cuba will probably have heard about, the Latin American School of Medicine. Latin American School of Medicine, I think, is the largest medicine school in the world, and it trains doctors and physicians from all over the world, but in particular it offers scholarships to doctors from the global south to study in Cuba free of charge, and its ethos is that the students that study at the Latin American School of Medicine in Havana then go back to their communities, the countries they're there from, and they serve the poorest communities, the most oppressed communities. And currently, the Latin American School of Medicine has around 300 Palestinian students, and this training of Palestinian medics has gone back. They've been doing this for 60 years. This is nothing new. And this ethos of them going back to serve their communities is sort of highlighted by a young Palestinian female doctor called Razan Malek from Ramallah in the West Bank. She gave an interview to Belly of the Beast, which is a Cuban news outlet, which if you aren't aware of them, please go and check out their videos on YouTube, they're fantastic. But what she said about Cuba's support is, and I quote, "Cuba has given many scholarships to Palestinians, and that allows Palestine to, in the future, have a group of doctors who go to work and help the people of the homeland." In November, Diaz-Canel invited these Palestinian students to the Palace of the Revolution in Havana, where he was presented with a black and white keffiyeh by the students, obviously a cherished symbol of Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian national liberation struggle. And he told the students there, "We are going to take care of you, we are going to give you all of our attention, we are going to accompany you in your lives and careers because you are the future of Palestine." And a week later, on November the 24th, there was a huge march in Havana. Around 100,000 people took to the streets of Havana. I know we're used to sort of big marches in this country, in Palestine, but to get 100,000 people onto the streets of Havana was no mean feat. And at the front of the march, wearing his black and white keffiyeh, was Diaz-Canel with other Cuban leaders, and he led the march, which many of the Palestinian students currently there in Havana studying marched right past the US Embassy in Havana. So again, another clear example of the difference in leadership that we can see between Cuba and let's say our own government. Last night, calling the Cubans out to support the International Day of Action tomorrow, Diaz-Canel said Cuba will never be among the indifferent, and we've seen that across for the whole history of the Cuban Revolution over the last 6+ decades. Cuba stands above most other nations, if not all nations, in its long commitment to the Palestinian cause. And Cuban support for the Palestinians is not performative, and it's not just words, it's action. There are deep ties of solidarity that exist between the two nations, and the solidarity that is extended from the Cubans to the Palestinians is rooted in Cuba's dearly held internationalist ethos, which we see not just for the Palestinians, but to all oppressed peoples of the world. And it's also rooted in the recognition, and I think this is a recognition that comes from the Cubans and the Palestinians, that this is the struggle of the Cubans and the struggle of the Palestinians is the same struggle. It's the same struggle against imperialism, and it's the same struggle for national liberation. While of course the Cubans have not experienced the horrors that the Palestinians have had to endure over the last 75 years, particularly in the last few months, Cuba does know full well what it's like to confront imperialist aggression, occupation of their land, and a suffocating economic blockade imposed on it by a neighbour much more powerful than itself. and I can think of no two causes, the Cuban cause and the Palestinian cause, which expose more clearly the rank hypocrisy of the United States, other imperialist nations, and the supposed international rules-based order. With the Cubans and its struggle against the blockade, the world is completely united, almost unanimously united in condemnation every year at the United Nations General Assembly. The vast majority of the world's countries vote with Cuba to end the blockade. There are two countries consistently over the last 30 years which have voted against Cuba's motion. I don't think I need to tell you which two countries they are. And increasingly we're seeing the international community over the last few months becoming united in their opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza. The vast majority of ordinary people across the world, and increasingly the governments who represent them, are coming out in staunch opposition to the 75 years of ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and now genocide. But in both cases, despite the flagrant breaking of international law, the consistent breaking of international law, the injustice in both countries continues, and the sort of international institutions which are supposed to uphold this rules-based order remain impotent in both cases to do anything about it. But I want to finish before we hand over to Dalal by saying that it is not just a shared struggle against injustice, and it's not just the ties of solidarity between Cuba and Palestine which unites them. It is also a shared commitment to resistance. And I just want to give a sort of brief anecdote from my time in Palestine and Cuba. Like I said, 10 years ago, I was in the West Bank volunteering with the Right to Education campaign at Birzeit University, and I met a Palestinian student who was in her late 20s, and we were chatting, and she told me that her father had been imprisoned since the Second Intifada, and her husband had recently been placed in administrative detention in Israel's prison. And she had a sort of stoicism about her, and as we were talking, I'll have to paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said along the lines of, "We will continue to resist." And it was there that she explained to me the Palestinian, this notion of, and I'm going to sort of probably butcher the Arabic pronunciation of sumud, which is this, which roughly translates as steadfastness, and which has become a sort of Palestinian cultural value more than anything, which defines their continued resistance to the Israeli occupation, ethnic cleansing, and now genocide. Fast forward 9 years, I was in Cuba last year for May Day, taking a delegation of young trade unionists to Cuba. And for those who follow the news in Cuba, you'll know that Cuba is currently experiencing its worst economic crisis since the early 90s, since the special period. And as soon as you step off the plane in Havana, you see the hardship, you see the difficulties which are being caused by the blockade. As you speak to ordinary Cubans, be that doctors, educators, people at a local street party that I met for one of the committees for the defence of the revolution, that same stoicism which I experienced talking to a Palestinian student in the West Bank 10 years ago, you see that in the Cubans as well. Is we will never give up, we will not forego our commitment to our revolution and our struggle. And today, I guess for all of us, for socialists, for trade unionists, for activists, for all of us that want to build a better world, Palestine quite rightly is at the very forefront of that struggle, and it's at the very forefront of our focus at this moment in time. And the Cubans have always understood the importance of the Palestinian struggle. And their long history of solidarity with the Palestinians, I think, should inspire us all, not just to continue fighting for a free Palestine, but also to continue showing our solidarity with the Cubans in their own struggle against imperialism. And I just want to finish with a quote from Razan Maleh, the Palestinian student who I quoted earlier, who currently studies in Havana. And she, this quote was again to the Belly of the Beast news outlet that I mentioned. And she sort of echoed the words of Hassan Kanafani, the great Palestinian revolutionary PFLP spokesman and writer, when she said, the Palestinian cause is not only for Palestinians, it's the cause of all oppressed peoples of the world. And Cuba's solidarity with the Palestinians over the last 60 plus years demonstrates that perfectly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tariq. That was so informative. And I urge you, if anyone can, to visit Cuba. It really is an amazing place to go to. I was at the Coalition BDS workshop not long ago, and we sharing ideas and talking about how many of us have been going out on the streets and asking shops to not stock Coca-Cola. And I mentioned about how amazing it was to go to Cuba, and you don't see Coca-Cola anywhere, McDonald's, any of those corporations. But it's quite liberating to actually get off the plane and realise that you're not surrounded by all this propaganda. They call it advertising, but really it's propaganda. And to have, it's quite liberating, actually, not to see these transnational corporations not only exploit countries in the global majority, but violate human rights on all different levels. So it's an honour now to present Dalu. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your coming to share with us our pain about Palestine and about what is going on right now in Gaza. First of all, I would like to introduce myself, Dalul Nider. I am from Palestinian from Gaza, from North Jabalia exactly. I moved to UK in 2017. I lost actually my family in this war, including my beloved mom. It was in 3rd of December 2023, the Israeli occupation, the Israeli atrocities. They insist to kill my family, including my mom, without any reason. Because Israel kill them because they can. Why they can? Because they have got the power. Why they have the power? Because they authorize it by the USA and the UK and the Western countries. They authorize them to kill as much as they can from the Palestinian. My mom with my family has been sleeping in a piece in the house. They demolished 3 stories, 6 flats. It was inside about 25. 5 it has been murdered. The rest of them it has been under the rubble, including my daughter 6 months old. There is no any explanation for this atrocity. If you go through, and like my family, there is 1,000 by the way. My family, apart from those 1,000, it has been murdered without any reason. Thousands of Palestinians, it has been murdered, and right now there's a starvation in the north. Like a kind of, if you refuse to move to the south, there is one more option, will be the hunger, the starvation. This is the proper meaning for the ethnic cleansing, how they want to take over for Palestine. So that's briefly about my family actually. I just want to comment in one more sentence. My little daughter, 6 months old, it has been rescued from under the rubble for 3 times. Imagine, you just lost the first place, the second, you just keep moving, you're seeking the life. The Palestinian love in Gaza, in Palestine, they are love peace, they want the peace, they want the life, they doesn't want this war anymore. But Israel, they want this war on us. They doesn't want any peace, they doesn't want. Right now we seen them clearly how they are doing so far and practicing their atrocity on us. Recently, about 2 days ago, we have seen the flower massacre. My brother-in-law, he went there. He told me literally, this will haunt me in my sleep every single day. I can't forget this flower. It has come to my house with the blood. I know personally 12 people, they've been murdered in this day without reason. And we have seen the propaganda in the media from The Guardian, the BBC, they've been talking about dozens of Gazians, it is being died through the crowd. How's come? You just mentioned, even if Bengavi, it is being commenting this incident in this casualty and say, the soldier opened the fire from their own tank toward the Palestinian. We must valuable. This is our honorable. That means he's proud. That is their soldier. They killed this innocent. They've been starving for about 3-4 months without any humanitarian aid, And once the lorries and the truck to cross to the north, it's like the track. They just start bombing them and open the fire on them and killed more than 112 and more 1,000. It's been injured. Just ask yourself, imagine if those civilians, it was Israeli, what the reaction would be from the war. This is just imagine if those civilians, it was Israeli and it's being targeted from the Palestinian because they are, to be clear, even the world will not let the Palestinians starve in the Israeli. That's from the beginning, before to imagine even this. They will never let the Israeli. Imagine they live their own luxury life. They're practicing their apartheid. They do whatever they want with the green light from the Western and from the USA and from UK to do whatever they want. And all of this in the same time, they not open the border to a few bottle of water or a few of food for these people starving. We seen them storming the hospital, killing the children, the schools, bombing everywhere. Nothing left in Gaza. What's the next? What's the point? America for the third time voting against the ceasefire. So what's the reason? The UK government, the Conservative, even with the Labour Party as well, both of them agreed this time to slaughter and murder the Palestinians together. This is something very strange. They agreed together, they vote against the ceasefire just to slaughter and murder the Palestinian. Does the Palestinian life not matter anymore? I mean, we don't have the priority like the rest of the nation to live in our life in a peace. That's something painful. Imagine to go to get a floor, food for your kids while they are waiting, starving. You come back in a coffin for them. How you could explain it for the next generation? Just imagine your kids waiting for the food. You went to pick up a food, you come back in a coffin in a white face. Come on, how these kids will accept it? Just I need explanation for myself as a Palestinian. I'm been in this pain for a while. Up to now, I couldn't understand how they do this without any consideration for the humanitarian, for the human rights, for that. That's clearly significant. That's clear sign about they know who stand by their back. They know the USA, UK. They will never be held accountable about why you killed this Palestinian, why you killed the civilians. They are only come to get food. At the same point, why they choose this tough time in the middle of the night? Everything. If you go through this procedure to see this is inability want to kill the Palestinian by this way. They decide what time the food want to cross. They decide, they want the Palestinian to be starving. As much as the Palestinian, they will go close to the tank to get this food down, they will kill them. Without any reason. They only misusing like the Islamic groups to take over of Gaza. In the West Bank, there is no Hamas. We never heard about any Islamic group. And you've seen the settler, how many lands they've been stolen and take over in West Bank. In East Jerusalem. Now, Bingabir lately, he mentioned about the Muslims, they want to do the Holy Month, the prayer, they said not allowed for them. There is lots of things going through the Palestinian cause, and the world had failed us for decades, for years. And we've been, let's imagine about when they talk about the Hamas. Even if say Hamas want to leave, we will be under the occupation, we will be under the suffer again. I mean, these things, it is very clearly, very, very, very clear and obvious about our suffer, our pain, but they doesn't pay any consideration. They doesn't want to stop Israel anymore. They just authorize them. They're sending for them the weapons. My family were killed by the Israeli, by the weapons. Who knows where this weapons it is being manufactured? With the F-16, the soldiers. We've seen lately about the American force Aaron when he paid the firing himself from the Israeli embassy. Why? Just ask yourself why he has done this so far for us. He couldn't handle this pain. He knows the truth. Lots of people, they start watching this genocide and they feel helpless. But our leader who in charge, they could change. They could do something, but they didn't. They just want to keep this genocide. They just enjoy our bloodshed to see it going so far. Now almost 5 months. Now just one more point about the Palestinian. In every single yard in Gaza, there is a pain, by the way. Every single house, lost a family, injured, displaced, all of them. Know how, if you go one by one, actually, the static up to now, more than 100,000, it is being killed and injured. That means if we go static, that's about 5% from the total population of Gaza. That is a high rate numbers about these things. Now the kids, the majority of them get killed or have no parents or have no place. They have no access for the medical treatment. They have no access for the schools, the season for the school, the education. Their life, they have no life actually. Literally, they have no life in Gaza. And we keep fighting, we keep asking for this ceasefire. The only thing ceasefire. And all the world failed us in this ceasefire. We've seen America to keep voting. I think America must not play a role as a peace seekers in the group who's seeking. USA is fighting next to Israel, exactly. They are together in the same path. I'm wondering always when Biden is this bloody man talking about we are going to do ceasefire. You providing them. You did this so far. Who you are to ask for ceasefire? You must be isolated. You must stand with Israel. When the negotiation take place, this man must be next to Israel, and we must negotiate them about the deal or about anything, because they're no longer entitled to represent the peace in the world. They're not entitled. Same thing for Rishi Sunak and their government. Keir Starmer in the beginning said, Israel have the right to cut water, food. What kind of right they have? I just wondering, who authorizing you? And who? We are 2.2 million Palestinians in the north, in Palestine, in Gaza, sorry. Who you are to authorize them to do this so far for us? I'm just wondering how you take a step like this. It is very strange thing. What's going on in Gaza, we never seen it before. Never happened. The destruction in Gaza, unbelievable. What we see in the media, it is a tiny percentage from what the truth in the ground. Those people in the ground, when I talk with them, they say the thing you see in the media, it is not matching with the truth. There is something unbelievable, indescribable about how we live our routine life. Imagine if you have a family and you're still alive. You will spend from the early morning going. If you are lucky, still have 2, 3 brothers or whatever, or relative. You will divide the task between each other. Listen, go and get a water. I'll get a hand to try some wood to set a fire to cook or anything for the kids. The other man, they will start looking for any kind of things, food, expire, whatever. Doesn't care. Grace, herbs, anything. Just want to survive. And we have seen lately the shameful response from our neighbor as well. This is taken into consideration. Our neighbor as well, this is shameful for them. That's a clear message. The Western complicity with them, but the neighbors as well, they do so far the same as them. They didn't make any step to stop this thing. They could use the diplomatic way to stop this genocide in Gaza and the ethnic cleansing. They can actually, but they didn't want it. They just want to keep going. They just enjoy to see the Palestinians suffer like this. They start recently producing lots of gory video to make these things familiar and use it. I mean the Palestinian. Oh yeah, they use for it. Like what we've seen in Africa about the skinny bodies and those people. Now for us it became familiar, and now they want to do these things for the rest of the world. That's the gory videos and this stuff going in Palestine. This is something became familiar. We use for it because now we talk about 5 months of this genocide. Lots of massacre. It is being the first massacre I remember. It was in Mahmadani Hospital in Central Gaza. It is actually Central Gaza, by the way. It is Israel did split it and including in the north. And in that day, it was were killed about 550. Okay. In this day, to be honest, when I hear this news and I'm being shocked and say, listen, now they will stop Israel. No way to let them cross for the next step. This is something we never seen someone have the power to bombing the hospital and kill more than 550 in one go, just to kill all these one go. Okay. And the world just keep watching silently. No one even asks Israel, please just stop it, not allowed for you. Sometimes you need to use your own way to stop this thing, not only to condemn, not only to say this is something shameful in Israel. Come on, this must be taken seriously to stop it. I don't want your condemnation, but because I have seen it before, it doesn't work. So now you need to do something will be worked out and to get the result. And after the Mahmadani, we see them bombing Al-Kamal Adwan Hospital, Al-Auda Hospital, Al-Shifa Hospital, and all their lying about the tunnels or Hamas, all this bullshit. We haven't seen anything. It has been only the way to enforce the people from the north to live to the south for their plan, the ethnic cleansing. That's their plan, because in the hospital, when they invade the hospital, we haven't seen anything. Even sometimes I say, okay, let's agree. It was Hamas inside, okay, or whatever, or even there's tunnel. This authorized you to do this so far. This authorizes you to go inside the hospital and start bombing all the machine and killing the patient. Which international law give you the authority? Even let's consider even this patient. He's lying in the bed with amputation legs. He's a Hamas soldier. Any rule in the world give you the authority to do these things? There is no any rule. Patient must be respectful. The civil, anyone inside the hospital, you have to treat them and deal them as this patient. We see them, they just take the patient and throw like a piece of shit, just throw them out of the hospital. They couldn't even bury the bodies of the martyrs. My brother's body, by the way, is still under the rubble because there's no equipment, no fuel in the north to take this body. Even we couldn't make something, the funeral for these bodies. Imagine how we are suffering. And now have you seen lately the videos about the people crowded for the floor and some martyr between them? The people just want the food. Now for myself, actually, I'm not thinking about my family because I say, okay, they are in a peace, hopefully, in the heaven. But I'm worried about the rest. This still survive. My wife and my daughter moved to the north, to the south about 4 days ago. The way, imagine, my wife is still up to now. She's in suffering pain because the way, walking about 40 miles from the north to the south, carrying little daughter heavy with your bag. And when they cross the checkpoint, the soldiers started swearing and saying a very bad behavior regarding all these Palestinians, regardless if you are male or female, doesn't matter for them. At the end, they will practice their own agenda. Those soldiers, the Israeli soldier right now in Gaza, they do anything without, I mean, no one will ask them about the list. I mean, what have you done so far? There is no, for example, the CCTV footage for this soldier will be not required for them to see, for example, the truth, because they said, listen, do whatever you want. You are authorized. We have the power. That's the point. That is the point we see lately. And as much as I will talk about this point, will be not enough. This is less than 1% from what they are like now living, and about the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Something we couldn't describe it anymore, to be honest. And all this my talking, nothing will work if we want to equal only 1% from the situation over there. The people is still there without any medical treatment in the north. The kids, we have seen lots of kids, they've been died because the lack of the food and the lack of the food. And actually there is, by the way, there is no drinkable water because the water in Gaza must be go through the treatment, must be the water before you drink it, treatment. Now the people have the water straight away drink it because they have no option. Thank you very much. If there is any question or anything, most welcome to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dalil. And I think this is why it's so important to have Palestinian voices at the forefront of any campaign. And again, these are the voices that the mainstream media is not capturing and not talking about, the lived experience of what's happening daily. And again, reiterates the need for our solidarity. And our need to challenge our own government, because ultimately this is where we live. And it's amazing to hear about what Cuba's doing, and I think people need to know about what's happening in the global majority. But it should also inspire us to put pressure on our own government more and more, because it really is shameful the situation we are in Britain today in terms of our governing powers. And I think, Dalil, what you were saying was very important about how these videos now these gory videos are almost becoming normalised. And I think that's something that easily happens with social media. You see these videos whizzing round, and I think we have to remember what you brought home to us, Dalil, that these are people's families. So I just want to open to the floor really now. Any comments or questions either to Tariq or Dalil? I think they both get very powerful.
Sheffield, let alone
the Israeli flag. Yesterday you were in the demonstration.
Yes, I was. with
Israeli
my
flag.
yes. I was.
Shame on you. You have no right to ask these questions. No credibility.
No.
You have no credibility.
I do have credibility.
You were raising the Israeli flag. If you were an honest, honorable person, will be another different situation. Get out.
This is a public meeting. I want to have a conversation first.
It's not a conversation. Get out here.
Get out of the
It's not a conversation. Get out.
Why should I?
Get out because you don't have. You are an apologist for Zionism, apologist for killing, for genocide.
It's not
for
a genocide.
76 years.
It's not
Get out.
76 years.
Get out.
All the conflicts have been started by Hamas.
It's a genocide.
It's not a genocide.
It's a genocide. You're not welcome. Get out.
I'd love to see a
It's a genocide. It's a genocide. You're not welcome. Get out of here.
It's not a genocide.
It's a genocide. You're not welcome. Get out.
I'm not opposed to killing at all.
It's a genocide. You're not welcome. Get out. You're not welcome. Get out.
We'll go to police.
Get out.
Piece of shit. Come on. It's a genocide. You're not
Of course
welcome.
I'm a piece of
Get
shit.
out
No.
of here. It's a genocide. You're not welcome. Get out of here.
Just like, so I wanted to talk to this guy because I feel sorry for him. I want to talk to him.
Get out. Get out.
No.
You don't have human values. You
Of
stupid.
course I have human
Get
values.
out of here. Leave.
Just leave.
Leave now. You're not welcome.
It's ridiculous.
Leave. You're ridiculous.
It's not.
To the sea, Palestine.
That's a genocidal chant. That's a genocidal chant.
From the river to the sea,
Are you a person of the
Palestine
thingy?
From the river
Are you
to the sea, Palestine will be free.
I don't think so. Yeah, just show up. Yes, I can teach you a lesson if you like to come outside. Not a fight, but I mean like talking. Yes, that's ridiculous. Yeah, we like to. Of course I am. Of course I am. Just show your true colours. You're not educated. You're all.
Israel flag here.
Yes.
Sorry.
Israel flag.
How provocative can you be? Oh, I'm sorry about your family getting murdered. Yeah, that's a bit. That's a separate way.
Yes, it is a shame. It is a shame. I don't feel sorry for him, genuinely. Yeah.
Go separate ways.
Before what? Are you threatening me? You're threatening me?
Stop, please.
No.
Sir.
Cowards. You're all cowards. Come outside then. Come outside. Exactly, you're all cowards.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. We're in.
Actually, they post it on Facebook as a public thing.
but they've hired the room and it's a private event, so you have to pay to get in. So it's a private event and it's technically it's fine now. You have to leave.
So I asked them on the way in. They said that's fine, you can go in back to the nation.